A hush of winter air lingered outside the estate, but inside, a different stillness waited to be found, one that would, before the night ended, bend an entire household toward unexpected hope. Holiday lights shimmered along the vast walls of the Calder residence. Crystal chandeliers scattered gold across polished marble, and a towering Christmas tree dominated the grand foyer in a sweep of silver ribbons and glass ornaments. A quartet played an elegant but overwhelming melody, its bright notes ricocheting between laughter, champagne, and conversation. At the edge of the room stood Lydia Hart, the newly hired nanny. Her dark uniform dress contrasted gently with her pale hair, loosely fastened behind her. She had been instructed only hours earlier: observe, stay quiet, avoid involvement during the party. Yet her gaze kept drifting to a distant window, where a small girl sat alone amid the glittering chaos. 6-year-old Aria Calder, daughter of the host Damien Calder, CEO of Calder & Co., rested with her back pressed to the wall. Pink tulle pooled around her as she turned a snow globe in tiny, rhythmic circles. No one noticed her, not the staff, guests, or servers weaving between clusters of conversation. Lydia took a slow breath, abandoning her post by the bar. She crossed the room carefully, sidestepping discussions about markets and investments until she reached the quiet pocket where Aria sat. Kneeling gently, she spoke in a soft tone. "Hello there." Aria didn't react. Her gaze stayed on the swirling glitter suspended in the globe. "I'm Lydia," she added. "I started today. May I sit with you?" The child didn't move away, so Lydia settled beside her, mirroring her posture. The quartet's music rose sharply. Aria flinched. Lydia noticed. Too loud, she thought, adjusting her own breathing to match the small girl's steady motions. The next song shifted into a waltz. Lydia hesitated, then extended her hand. "Dance with me?" Aria's eyes lifted for only a breath before dropping again. Her fingers froze. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Aria placed her small hand into Lydia's. Lydia rose slowly, guiding her. The snow globe remained tucked securely under Aria's arm as they began to sway. No steps, just gentle motion along the edge of the gathering. At first, no one saw. But then one guest noticed. Then another. A subtle hush spread. Even the staff paused mid-stride. From the staircase above, Damien Calder halted mid-step. His whiskey glass hung loosely at his side as he watched his daughter move in someone's arms for the first time in years. Disbelief softened into something fragile. Hope. Whispers rippled around the room. Lydia blocked them all out, watching only Aria, adjusting each movement with care. When Aria twirled slightly, clutching her snow globe, Lydia followed, matching her turn. Eventually, Aria pressed against Lydia's side and stilled, her tiny hand still securely wrapped around Lydia's fingers. Lydia crouched again, brushed a stray curl from Aria's forehead and whispered, "You did wonderfully." The next morning, Lydia sat in the kitchen, prepared to lose her job for breaking the rules. Instead, Damien Calder approached her, no anger, only a quiet desperation beneath his composed exterior. "What did you do?" he asked. Lydia explained gently. She hadn't done anything to Aria. She had simply noticed her, matched her, waited. Damien listened, torn between disbelief and awe. He confessed that countless specialists had tried to reach Aria without success. Maybe they were trying to fix the wrong thing. Lydia said softly, "Maybe she doesn't need to change. Maybe the world needs to slow down for her." His silence told her she wasn't wrong, just saying something he'd never learned to see. Later that day, Aria found Lydia by the window, forming shadow shapes with her hands. The child sat beside her. She smiled, and that evening, Damien found them sitting together in a quiet game of mirrored gestures. Aria slept soundly that night, no pacing, no restlessness. The next morning, Damien offered Lydia a long-term position. She hesitated. Her contract elsewhere waited, but before she could reply, A small hand tugged at hers. Arya whispered one word. Barely a breath. Stay. Lydia stayed. Days slipped into a rhythm of soft rituals. Lydia never brought flashy tools or rigid exercises. She watched what Arya watched: the shift of sunlight on glass, the hush of wind through trees, the way Arya's shoulders swayed when music carried the right calm. Slowly, Arya reached for Damien more often. Sometimes she hummed when he entered a room, a sound Lydia explained as her expression of safety. Damien, once rigid and hurried, learned to slow his voice, his pace, his expectations. He knelt to Arya's level. He asked instead of instructed. He offered choices instead of commands. And then came the grocery store. Holiday chaos erupted around them, flashing lights, loud music, clattering carts. Arya froze, overwhelmed. A strangled cry escaped her before she crumpled to the floor. Hands clamped over her ears. Startled, Damien reacted sharply, trying to stop the outburst. Lydia caught his arm. "Don't." He stared at her, stunned. "This isn't misbehavior," she whispered. "She's drowning." Lydia knelt beside Arya, moving slowly so the child could see each motion. She hummed the familiar evening melody. Damien followed Lydia's calm instructions: match your breathing to hers. Gentle pressure, lower your voice. Gradually, Arya leaned into him. Her sobs quieted. She whispered a single word: home. Back in the car, Damien stood for a long moment in the cold, shaken by how much he didn't know. Lydia met his gaze gently. "You weren't supposed to know yet," she said. "You were trying to pull her into your world. But she needs you to learn hers." He listened, maybe for the first time in years. Arya blossomed in ways both tiny and enormous. She held Damien's hand more often. She hummed loud around him. She rested her head against his chest during quiet moments. And as Damien learned his daughter's rhythm, he began to notice something else. Lydia. Her patience held depth. Her quiet steadiness carried shadows. One night, he found her in the library. Eyes wet as a lullaby played softly. Arya had whispered along to it earlier that night, the first time she'd ever sung. Lydia admitted the lullaby had belonged to her little sister, who had developmental challenges and passed too young. The grief still lived quietly within her, guiding her toward children like Arya. Damien sat beside her silently, offering presence rather than platitudes. Something unspoken settled between them, tender, cautious, true. Winter days drifted forward. Arya flinched at the estate's bright holiday decorations, overwhelmed by blinking lights and loud displays. Lydia proposed a low-sensory Christmas dim lights. Soft music, gentle scents, a small tree, no chaos. Damien resisted at first, fearing he was stripping away tradition. "You're not making things easier," Lydia said. "You're making things possible." He understood only when he saw Arya trembling beneath holiday jingles later that night. The next morning, the towering tree vanished, replaced by a small pine in Arya's playroom. Wooden beads, handmade garlands, soft yellow lights in peace. On Christmas Eve, Arya placed a paper star atop the tiny tree. Then she turned to her father and smiled, small, shy, powerful enough to stop his breath. He joined her on the floor. She whispered, warm, after opening his gift, a scarf embroidered with her name. Damien's chest ached at the simple truth of it. That night held more warmth than any lavish celebration could have offered. The days that followed deepened that softness. Arya slept curled against Damien as he read to her. She whispered, "Daddy," no loud, and he held her closer. Tears slipping quietly down his cheeks, finally hearing her. And Lydia saw all of it. Her heart pulling in ways she hadn't expected. But a storm was coming, one born not of family, but of the world outside their walls. A week into the new year, the storm arrived not as thunder, but as whispers that drifted through halls, seeped into phone calls, and finally broke into the open in the form of an email addressed to Damien Calder. Journalist had discovered that Lydia Hart once worked at an understaffed care facility where her younger sister had lived. The story spun false accusations, claims of negligence, of improper training, of emotional instability. None of it was true, but it was written with enough venom to cast doubt upon anything it touched. Damien sat frozen at his desk, face pale, while Lydia stood across from him, hands clasped tightly. She had lived through this once before. She recognized the storm's shape instantly. Her voice stayed even. "It's going to spread." Damien opened his mouth, shut it, and finally whispered, "Give me time to handle it." But Arya, who had wandered into the doorway unnoticed, sensed the tension. She pressed her palms to her ears, overwhelmed by the sharpness in the air. Lydia rushed to her before Damien could react, kneeling and folding the child into her arms. Humming the melody that anchored her. Damien watched, gut twisting, not because of Lydia, but because he had allowed the outside world to invade the fragile progress Arya had made. He needed to act quickly. The article broke 2 days later. Gossip erupted. Parents from Arya's school demanded Lydia be removed from any interaction with children. Online forums spread the false narrative. Reporters started circling the estate. Every time Lydia stepped outside, cameras flashed. Even some household staff grew uneasy, unsure of what to believe. That night, Damien found Lydia packing. "You're leaving," he said, not a question. "I can't let this hurt Arya," she replied. She closed the suitcase with trembling hands. "I've lived through this smear before. It doesn't go away quickly." He stepped closer. "Lydia, she needs you." Her shoulders tightened. "If I stay, she becomes a target. They'll twist everything. They always do." Before he could speak again, Arya's quiet voice drifted from the doorway. "No go," Lydia's breath caught. She turned, kneeling to meet Arya's gaze. "Sweetheart, I have to." Arya's lower lip trembled. She pressed her forehead to Lydia's, whispering, "Stay warm." The words shattered Lydia's resolve. She hugged Arya tightly, tears leaving quiet trails down her face. But she still stood, still reached for the suitcase handle. Damien grabbed it. "You're not leaving," he said, voice low, fierce. "I'm not letting the world rewrite your story." For the first time since the scandal began, Lydia wavered. Damien spent the next morning on the phone with attorneys, journalists, and publicists. He released a statement backed by records, testimonials, and official logs from the facility, evidence that Lydia had never been implicated in wrongdoing and had, in fact, been the primary caregiver who comforted her sister during her final months. He named the article defamatory. The backlash was swift, but against the journalist, parents began rescinding their complaints. Staff members apologized. Some reporters even printed corrections. The storm didn't vanish overnight, but its fury cracked. Yet the damage lingered inside Lydia, even once cleared. She stood apart from the household, quieter, hesitant to step fully back into the warmth she had helped create. Arya noticed. One evening, as the snow settled thick against the windows, Lydia sat on the floor organizing puzzle pieces. Arya approached, placing her small hand atop Lydia's. "Warm," Arya whispered again. Lydia closed her eyes. That single word, Arya's word, was enough. Damien entered the room just then, stopping at the threshold. He watched Lydia holding Arya close, watched the peace that had returned, watched how easily his daughter trusted this woman who had given them both a language for their own hearts. He stepped into the room. "Lydia," he said softly, "I want you to stay. Not just as Arya's caregiver, as part of this home." She looked up slowly, carefully. "Damien, if you leave," he continued, "you're not protecting us. You're abandoning a life we're still building." Her breath shook. Arya climbed into her lap and placed Lydia's hand over her own heart. "Here," she whispered. Tears welled in Lydia's eyes. She nodded. She stayed, Winter thawed into early spring. The world calmed. Reporters moved on. Neighbors forgot the scandal. The nights lengthened into softer hours filled with stories, humming, and quiet laughter. Damien changed, too. He no longer rushed through hallways or barked clipped instructions into phones. He woke early to make Arya's breakfast. He learned the melody Lydia hummed so he could calm Arya during her morning transitions. He breathed differently, steadier, slower, anchored by the rhythm his daughter had taught him, and Lydia remained the quiet constant the household needed, but it wasn't. Until a gentle evening in late March that everything shifted. Arya had fallen, asleep on the couch, curled against Lydia's side after a long day in the garden. Damien covered his daughter with a blanket, then sat beside Lydia close enough that their shoulders brushed. "She smiled a lot today," he said. "She did." "It's because of you." Lydia shook her head. "It's because she's growing." Damien's gaze lingered on her. "We're all growing." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft hum of the house settling for the night. Then Damien whispered, "I'm falling in love with you." Lydia inhaled sharply, eyes widening. Before she could speak, he continued, voice barely above a breath, "You don't have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know." She didn't look away. Her eyes softened in a way he had never seen. "You're not the only one," she said quietly. He reached for her hand, and for the first time since they had met, she didn't pull away. Spring blossomed. Arya continued to flourish, her words clearer, her steps lighter, her trust expanding. Lydia and Damien navigated the new tenderness between them with patience, always keeping Arya's well-being steady at the center. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It unfolded like the slow opening of a flower, delicate, honest, inevitable. One golden afternoon, while Arya played with sunlight on the library floor, Damien whispered to Lydia, "I think she's the one who taught me how to love again." Lydia smiled. "She taught me how to stay." The quiet life they built wasn't perfect. There were difficult mornings, overwhelming days, and moments where grief resurfaced. But they faced them together, father-daughter, caregiver growing into something resembling a family. And on the first warm day of June, as Arya chased dandelion seeds across the lawn, Damien wrapped an arm gently around Lydia's waist. She leaned into him. Arya looked back, smiling at the sight of them joined, and reached out her small hand. They walked toward her together. The world beyond the gates kept moving. But inside the estate, a different truth was beginning, one built from slow breaths, quiet songs, shared trust, and the steady determination to meet a small girl exactly where she was. Together, they stepped into a future shaped not by the noise outside, but by the soft, fierce love that had taken seed in the most unlikely of winters.